Welcome to the WorkWell Podcast. I'm Dulcie, and I'm here with my best friend of over 20 years, Yemisi.
20 years? Wow. And in that time, we've seen it all professionally. From big wins to epic fails, we've learned so much along the way about life, work, and everything in between.
We don't believe in gatekeeping, so we want to share these lessons with you. We've created this space to explore the challenges we all face, whether it's finding balance, building confidence, or even stepping into leadership.
You'll get stories, advice, and practical tools to help you feel inspired, informed, and excited to tackle whatever comes next.
So, take a deep breath, settle in, and let's dive into today's conversation. Okay, so welcome back. Last time we explored barriers and biases like the glass ceiling, like pay gap, the sticky floor, the broken rung, the maternal wall, all those awful systemic challenges that unfortunately sometimes shape how we progress or don't progress in our lives. But today we're sticking with workplace dynamics, but we are going to dive into cultural and systemic dynamics that influence how we work and how we connect. These dynamics may not always be obvious, but they do deeply affect the experiences that we have. So from things like the cultural tax to quiet quitting, even things like AI discrimination, we're going to explore the hidden forces at play. And of course, share some practical tips that you can take, whether you are dealing with them yourself or you are leading teams through them. All right. Are we ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. So the first one then is cultural tax. There's two, again, cultural tax and code switching. So cultural tax. What do you think that is?
I think some people just from a different culture not having an understanding of the culture they're working in, or not. No, hold on. Because when you said code switching, it made me think about the reason for code switching. So you're in an environment where there's not a lot of people that look like you or sound like you or have your lived experience, and that culture, because they're not aware of those differences, they don't know how to accommodate them. Something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, not too far off it. So the cultural tax is the extra burden that's placed on people from underrepresented groups to represent their identity. And to often do it without any recognition or compensation for it.
I see.
Right. And code switching is the adaptation of language or behavior or appearance to conform to whatever the workplace norms are. And this is often done at the expense of your emotional well-being or authenticity.
I know a lot about that.
So for examples of cultural tax then, you might be asked to lead diversity efforts. So they might ask you to lead diversity efforts or organize cultural events, or be the spokesperson for whatever community you represent. Code switching, you might be a Black employee who feels that, I might need to change my hairstyle, for example, to meet workplace norms.
Or accent.
You might be a non-native English speaker who feels like they have to suppress their accent in meetings to fit in. So if you are experiencing these kind of things around cultural tax or code switching, with the cultural tax, just say no. Easier said than done, I know, but there are ways to politely decline additional responsibilities, especially if they become overwhelming, even if they're not, if you just don't want to do it. So, for example, say, I appreciate the opportunity, but I am currently at capacity. Perhaps it can involve other people to share the load. And then, for code switching, and feeling like, I need to fit. Perhaps microaggressions have come your way about your accent, your appearance, etc., etc. If it's possible, if within your business there are affinity groups, I know a lot of larger businesses will have those different communities within the business, lean into those and find those safe spaces where you can look to them for support and sharing your experiences. If it doesn't exist within your business, look outside your business, whether it's with, your friends, former colleagues, people with whom you can discuss how to navigate that. It can be really, really difficult. Like we talked about in the last episode, there are going to be times in life when you have to look at the situation you're in, look at the environment you're in, and make a really hard call as to whether or not this is the place for you. If you are feeling like you have to change yourself to the point that you don't even feel like yourself, your well-being is suffering, you no longer feel like your authentic self, I'd be ready to bet money that you probably should not be there and find somewhere that appreciates you for who you are and how you are. As a leader now, and this episode, I'm going to try not to, come down on leaders as heavily as I did last time, but I'm making no promises. As a leader, distribute responsibilities equitably. So if, and it's not a bad thing that you want to do maybe cultural activities and events, yeah? But it isn't actually okay to then say, well, I want to do something for Chinese New Year, for example. I'm going to go ahead and ask all of my Chinese employees. Well, if the idea is that we want to do this event to get more people engaged and aware of it, involve a diverse group of people to work on the event. And also maybe if you need some expert insight into it, pay somebody.
Yeah.
Put money behind it. Put your money where your mouth is. It's not okay to burden employees from different groups.
Exact. I would say exact. So this is you took the words right out of my mouth. Don't. But they already they have a job description. They're doing their job. Yeah. You go and get someone whose job is to educate your workforce on these things.
That.
Pay someone to do that.
If you want to then offer it up to your team or the people in your business as, we're going to do this thing, we're having someone to come in and talk about that. If anyone wants to be involved.
Exactly.
And actually what you're allowing people to do from different backgrounds is to engage with it. So let's stick with the Chinese. I'm not Chinese. If there's a Chinese New Year thing, I'm actually really interested in it, right? And I would love to know more. So maybe I would put my hand up like, oh yeah, I would quite like to be involved in working on that event. This is how you actually truly engage people and in learning about other cultures, not by just turning to the Chinese person and saying, oh, hey, how do you even know if they know about that thing? Don't assume that because somebody comes from a certain background that they now can represent and talk about it. Because if you need to talk about specifics of certain elements of Nigerianness, I might not be able to do it.
Girl.
Also, there is no one way to be anything. Right? So
we're not a monolith.
We're not a monolith. And that just, again, demonstrates your lack of cultural understanding if you think that one person can suddenly represent an entire culture, country, ethnicity. That's mad.
And you said something, just because someone looks like they're from that background or culture does not necessarily mean they are.
So yeah, foster this inclusive environment where authenticity is valued over conformity.
Oh, that's a bar.
Allow people to turn up as themselves. Are they getting the job done? Listen, we're not saying that anyone can just roll up being a complete slob and just doing whatever. No. But if someone comes into work with braids, you don't need to comment on that. If someone comes into work and they've got certain piercings, so does it affect their ability to do the job? Did you hire them for what they look like or hire them for the skills that they bring to the table? Okay, so the next term is tall poppy syndrome.
I know that one. So they feel the need to cut you down to size when you're getting too big for your britches. Uppity.
So this is, exactly that. The criticism or isolation of individuals who excel or stand out in their roles. And it's often driven by jealousy and a desire to maintain equality. And you see this, you'll have this high performing employee, but now they're starting to be excluded from team discussions or excluded from social events because their success, it highlights other people's insecurities. And again, it does come from this emphasis on conformity, where it's like, hold on a minute. We don't do that here. We don't overperform here.
Mm.
I mean, oh my God, it's so ugly. Jealousy. It's green, it's not your color.
And what I find is it's not just about performance. I have found even things like personality or being well liked, or I've seen the whole spectrum of that thing where um someone has a lot of influence
Mm-hmm.
just through the sheer force of their either personality or just how they interact with people,
Mm-hmm.
and that is seen as a threat.
So this tall poppy thing goes hand in hand with another thing, which is typically used. Black women experience this a lot at work, called pet to threat.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Tell me
I
more.
have personal experience of this, and it's actually really mind-blowing
Mm-hmm.
to go through it,
Mm-hmm.
where you come in to a new team or a new business, whatever it might be,
Mm.
and you are loved.
Mm-hmm.
Everything seems like it's going really well. You have the support of, your peers, managers, mentors who are in this phenomenon of this observed phenomenon, often white males
Mm-hmm.
who are eager to train you and cultivate you.
Mm-hmm.
But as these women become more competent and confident, these same people will suddenly become their detractors.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, when they are novices, when they're more moldable, which is perceived as being more likable, Black women are seen as the pet. But as they
Mm.
grow, and like you were just saying now, they start to have confidence and exert influence and authority.
Without even trying. You see,
Without
they're not
trying, because
looking after. Yeah.
it's a natural progression of increasing your skills and everything else. Having that increased agency is now
Mm.
perceived to be a threat to the status quo, especially if you're in a culture, an environment which is dominated by white men. So as they are now on the cusp of advancing, they now lose support and access to building career opportunities. So it's a very, very interesting and well observed phenomena that happens within corporate settings. Yeah. It's most observed with Black women. It happens with Black men, or not even just Black, of color, basically, people of color. But
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be most stark with Black women because they're both Black and
Women. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's very similar to that tall poppy thing.
Mm.
Pet to threat, that is something that is most observed with Black women, but it's not exclusive to Black women.
Yeah.
It's like the tall poppy thing. It can happen to absolutely anybody of any background. But if you are going through that, it can feel, and again, I say it from personal experience, you can suddenly feel like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Like, what have I done? It's not you. It's other people's insecurity. You're not intimidating. They are intimidated.
I think that's one thing I needed to learn how to navigate in my career, because when I was confronted with this, my natural instinct and response was to diminish myself, make myself appear smaller, make myself appear less intelligent, make myself, to conform to their expectations or their feelings about me. Because I didn't want no trouble.
Right. And it doesn't feel good. It really
I just wanted to come in, do a good job,
yeah.
just I didn't want no trouble.
Mm-hmm.
As I matured both in age and in my career, I started to realize that it's not a me problem, it's a
No,
them
it's
problem,
a
and
them.
I need to stop internalizing their issues. And if you have an issue with me having influence or being this or that, whatever, that's a you thing. I can't do anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will not do is internalize it and then diminish myself in some way, shape, or form. No, that's not what we're going to do.
No
No.
words. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So if you're experiencing it, it's so important to do exactly that, right? Reframe this criticism, this isolation as a reflection of their insecurities,
Yeah, not
your
you.
worth.
Yes, it's not you.
It's not
Like,
you.
deep down,
Yeah,
it's not you.
it's not you. And
It's
it
not
doesn't
you.
feel good, but it isn't
So,
you.
take your power back, because when you internalize it, you give them power over you.
Exactly.
And they can only have power over you as much as you allow them to. So take it back. You're not oppressed in any way, shape, or form.
No.
That's a reflection of them, not
Them.
you.
Yeah.
You're still fabulous.
You're so fabulous.
A flower blooms even if there's nobody there to admire its beauty.
There you go. You're
Hold on to
stunning.
that.
You're blooming gorgeous. And build a network of supporters who do celebrate your achievements. Maybe they're not in the workplace. And again, I have talked about this in a previous episode. We're going to talk in the future about something called your personal board of directors. You've got to get your people around you.
See, community is so important.
Even if it's only one other person, start there. But you need to have people that are honest. You don't want people blowing smoke up your ass. You want people who are honest, but who support you and will celebrate you.
See, the key word there is celebrate you. Okay, because nobody is perfect. Everybody has issues. But you see, when you're doing well, you want to be surrounded with people who will celebrate you, not find fault in what you're doing. Or,
exactly.
It takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to maintain the sanity of that child. No. So don't forget your people. Don't forget your community. And that's one thing that I need to work on later on, is actually being more proactive about surrounding myself with those type of people. You have a choice. You need to do that work.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things I've been trying to be more intentional about.
Yeah, 100%. If you're a leader, you have to again be proactive in encouraging a culture of collaboration and mutual celebration. Keep your eyes peeled. You can see this stuff, right? Address it. Don't shy away from having difficult conversations. I know it can be really awkward and uncomfortable. And don't add fuel to the fire either, right?
Yeah.
Recognize people, don't try and counter it by now not rewarding high performers. Okay, we're not don't do that. But recognize these behaviors and nip it in the bud. If you can see that some of your people are trying to block someone else out because perhaps they're jealous of them, talk to them about it. Find a way to have that conversation and nip it in the bud. Normalize celebrating success for everybody. When you are celebrating someone, don't use them as a stick to beat others with either. That's not okay. Find ways to celebrate all the good things your people are doing. Things will look different. Don't try and present this one thing as the model and everyone else pales in comparison. Find ways to celebrate people's behavior. Have the difficult conversations if it needs to. Because if you don't have it now, you might be having it later with HR in the room.
You don't want that.
So just nip this stuff in the bud before it becomes a bigger issue. And actually, just on this point, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent, right?
She says right before she goes off on a tangent. Carry on.
When people go through these kinds of experiences, sorry, I'm also just not going to cry.
Yeah, I know. This is a tough one.
It's a very tough one.
It takes something out of them.
It can be so damaging.
Yeah.
And long after that situation is over, that person will still be dealing with what happened.
Yeah.
It can cut so deep. And I don't believe that any job has the right to leave these kind of indelible marks on people's spirits.
Yeah.
So you as a leader have a moral obligation to not allow your people's spirits to be damaged because of a fucking job.
And that starts with opening your eyes.
Open your eyes.
Don't walk around with blinkers on.
Right.
Open your eyes to see what's going on. Ignorance is not an excuse.
It's not. You're just as guilty as the people doing.
No. So you need to be aware of these things. These are things that you should preemptively have an awareness of if you're a leader that is worth their salt, because organizations are made up of human beings. So you know that there's a chance that things are happening that are not supposed to be happening. It's your job to keep an eye out for these things.
Absolutely. But honestly, there is such a heavy responsibility, which is also a phenomenal privilege as a manager, as a people manager to provide pastoral care.
Yeah.
It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's incredibly rewarding if you take it seriously and do your absolute best for your people, because we do too many hours at work for it not to have an impact, good or bad. So try and make that impact as good as possible in your people's lives. That's it. That's my
No, that was very well said. That's a much needed reminder. Especially as someone who has been a leader as well as on the other side of that thing. So there's really no excuse.
Yeah. Do your best. So the next one is quiet quitting. So I think this has been talked about a lot recently.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of articles.
It's a thing. So we all know what it is, but yeah, it's not about leaving your job physically,
quietly, or ghosting them. Like, you just don't show up for work.
It's just
Work one day. It's like you block everybody from work on your phone, and you just don't show up for work.
It's essentially the rejection of hustle culture. It's about setting and enforcing boundaries and doing only what is required in order to protect your well-being. So actually, when you look at
that's not and that's the thing, and this is why I have problems with labels sometimes, because when you look at the definitions of these things, you're like,
it's not bad.
What? Yeah,
it's not bad. So I think people talk about quiet quitting. So it's an interesting thing. I think this is one of these things in the all the shifts that we've seen post-pandemic around the different ways in which people are now looking at work. The overarching thing is people just don't want work to overload them anymore, because the problem is that over time work has just become too bloody much. So a lot of these things we kind of talk about now, even this whole ongoing saga about return to work and being in the office, like returning to the office, all that sort of shit. It's just it's people trying to correct things that have gone askew over the past however many decades. So quiet quitting is another correction to me. It's things like, if we think about what it actually looks like in reality, it's things like employees refusing to answer emails outside of work hours. Yeah. Why would I? Why were we doing that? We shouldn't have been doing that.
No.
It's things like them refusing to take on additional tasks outside of the remit of their job description without recognition and recompense. Yeah. Makes sense.
And that's why, when you start seeing job descriptions that have very kind of vague,
right,
that's a red flag.
It's a red flag,
because it's like, we just want you to do whatever we tell you to do.
If it ended with, we're like a family, run.
Oh no,
run. Think about your family. No. Do you really want to be in that kind of run? So Gallup did a study in 2022. And it found that 50% of the workforce, I think this was based on America, but 50% of the workforce is quiet quitting. I read that as 50% of the workforce is enforcing healthy boundaries.
And I think it's more than that, to be honest with you, because I'm seeing, especially with the increased numbers of, Gen Z joining the workforce, that number is going to be higher, because my life and my work should be in harmony.
Exactly. Going back to episode 1 about work.
Yeah, full circle. Full circle. And so it's them not tolerating disharmony between their work life and their life.
100%. And so I think quiet quitting is fantastic. Quiet quitting, I
hate that term, quiet quitting, though, Dulcie. I hate, I'm not quiet quitting. I'm setting healthy boundaries.
So I think some people, but they like to give it a term like
all these articles, I could give it a term that is very pro. What you call it? What's that thing where like you have these like almost like industrial era kind of thing where everybody needs to be just working.
Capitalism.
Yeah, but like it's less about.
It's capitalism.
Okay, it's capitalism. Let's call it what it is. It's like we should be chained to our desks and just productivity.
You're only as useful as you are productive. And so actually they want to give it this term that sounds negative, but it's not a negative thing. So if you are experiencing it, good for you. Just clearly communicate your workload and your boundaries, right? You can have a conversation with your line manager where you might say something like, I'd like to discuss my current workload to ensure that my focus is aligned with the team's priorities. That's a nice way of being like, let me just focus on all that matters. That's all I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
And then also just take some time. We talked about this a lot in the last episode of being honest with yourself, being objective about where you are and where and what you want, and just reflect on how much your workplace aligns with your personal goals and values. When we did the episode on burnout, we talked about misalignment burnout. That was one of the types of burnout. And you can experience that when who you are and what you want out of life is in opposition to the environment that you're in. So, the ideal is that you don't have to quit, because actually the expectation of you is just to do your job, and you actually like to do your job. And there's no need to sort of quietly instill these things. No one's calling you outside of work. No one's expecting you to do extra stuff without pay or recognition. That's the ideal, is to be in a place where actually you are aligned. So quiet quitting, while I think it's a good thing because it's really about being healthy with your boundaries, it is an indicator that you might be in the wrong place.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to take some time and reflect on whether that workplace is really aligned with you and what you want out of your career and your life. And if you are a leader, don't think of quiet quitting as a negative thing. Again, it's a signal for you of, oh, hold on, maybe I need to do something differently here and foster a culture of balance by setting realistic expectations, encouraging things like, time off. Which episode were we talking? I think it was burnout, when we had the advice to managers there about leading by example.
Yeah.
And like, don't say, oh yes, we like work-life balance, but you never take time off. And then, take the time to also address the root causes of disengagement. Maybe it's that goals and progression aren't clear. So they're like, well, fuck it. I don't even know why I'm doing this because I don't even know how it's going to contribute to my progression. Or that the recognition isn't clear, or you haven't really been setting those expectations. Like, really understand if people are quiet quitting, in inverted commas, what's causing them to draw away. And are those reasons things that you can address and reset so that actually expectations are matched between what the person needs and what the business needs, and actually all work together in perfect harmony?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll just say one thing here. There's a difference between quiet quitting and low employee engagement. So get straight in your mind really what you're trying to address here. Low employee engagement requires a very kind of structured approach and systematic approach to getting to the root cause of it. So just to be clear on that, because sometimes I think leaders conflate the two.
Although I do think low employee engagement is what leads to quiet quitting. You're not quite.
But that's the thing. But they're looking at So they're looking at the symptom rather than the root cause.
Yeah, and they're putting the blame on the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what that last point was about, is what are the root causes of disengagement?
Okay,
Do
gotcha.
something about that, because that's why people are quiet quitting. If everything's working as it should, no one's going to be quiet quitting. Because they're not. Remember, it's about rejecting something. You're saying, I don't want to do it like that. I don't like this thing that you're telling me to do. I don't like the way you people are doing things here. I don't want to answer emails and answer calls outside of work hours or do all this extra. That's the problem, is that there's this awful expectation of them to be doing way more than anyone ought to be doing. That's what you need to address. Not that they don't like it, but the fact, why are you doing that? Why are these things happening that are not appropriate? So that's like, quiet quitting is just the way of blaming the employee for a problem within the business.
Yes, that's precisely.
Yeah.
Because,
so as a leader, your job is to deal with the problem in the business that's leading to that behavior.
Exactly.
Okay, let me do this really, really quickly. It's maybe a little bit personal. We talked about the glass ceiling last episode. I'm going to talk about a different thing called the glass cliff. Do you have any idea what that one is? I could just explain it.
Just explain.
So the glass
It sounds very morbid.
cliff, again, it's one that I have experienced painfully. And it's a phenomena in which women seem to have broken the glass ceiling. So they're given leadership roles, business, government. And I say government because as I speak, I think people will have something in their minds. But they are only given these roles in a period of crisis or downturn, or when the risk of failure is at its highest. So there was a study done. It was done at the University of Exeter over here, and it was looking at FTSE 100 companies yet again, before and after the appointment of new board members, and it found that companies that appointed women to their boards were more likely than others to have experienced bad performance in the 5 months before the appointment.
Yeah.
So with this, what they kind of do is position women, it can be minorities as well, position these people from underrepresented groups in these leadership positions at the point where they're, like I said, the risk of failure is at its highest. It's a precarious position.
Proverbial is hitting the fan.
Right. And so if they turn the ship around and get them out of that, fantastic, yay, but they're probably not going to get much credit for it. But if the ship sinks, it was the fault of that woman or minority. It's like, you see? So I said government because I think we can look across the pond, over the Atlantic, and see a really interesting example of that recently, of a woman being put in a position where she was set to fail. And now we can say, well, it's because she's a woman and a woman of colour at that. Anywho, I won't go on to. I just wanted to bring that up because
No. That is something I noticed even recently. I'm glad you said people of color, because I noticed that with a company recently, they were getting hammered, really bad. And then all of a sudden, they have this new CEO that's a person of color, and I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it happens a lot. And I think when I read about this, it really helped me to understand an experience I had. And that experience was something that over time, more and more was revealed to me, that I then understood, the decision had been made before I even joined the company, let alone the team. And I was just the fall guy. So the last one we have, we're nearly done, folks, is AI discrimination. This is interesting. Again, very topical. What does that, if I say that, how do you take that?
So when I think of AI discrimination, I think of how AI perpetuates unconscious bias in the way it's trained. And it holds on to those. So whatever, AI can only give you what it's been fed. So if it's fed unconscious bias and all of those other things and discrimination, that's the lens through which it operates.
Precisely, huh? So that's exactly what it is. AI discrimination is the replication of societal biases in algorithms.
And amplification in some cases,
yes,
because of the volume of,
Yes, exactly. The replication and amplification of societal biases in the algorithms that are used for things like hiring, performance evaluations, and decision making. So hiring's a good example, right? So it might be that they're using an AI hiring tool and it's rejecting resumes that have ethnic names. That happens a hell of a lot. Or it flags career gaps disproportionately in women's resumes. This is actually a real thing. The MIT Technology Review did an article about that, how it's flagging gaps in women's resumes. It's like, oh, how lovely. How delightful. There are loads of things about AI. I can't even say it. AI. There are so many pros, but there are so many cons, not to mention the environmental impact. That's for a discussion for another day and probably for someone else's podcast. At all points of activity, we need to be really conscious of the biases that are in the system. So if you are experiencing it at some point within your work life, you can call it out, highlight it when you see it, right? So you can say things like, I noticed that X decision might have been influenced by an algorithmic assumption. I think we should review this manually.
Having the human in the loop.
Yeah, bring the human back into the loop, because sometimes you need that. We can't just blindly rely on these systems that are with bias built in. We have enough bias built into everything else.
Exactly.
And if you are a leader, it really sits with you. So audit your AI systems for fairness and transparency. Do that work, do the assessment, bring the humans back into the loop, ensure that things are being checked. So if it's hiring, for example, do some spot checks of rejected resumes. Just spot check it and just see, are there some themes coming through? Is it an ethnic names? We've seen I have seen certainly so many experiments where people have sent in a resume and had the name like Mohammed, and someone sent another the exact same resume and changed the name to Robert. Mohammed gets rejected, Robert gets accepted. People are doing these things, and don't let your company be the company that they do that test on. Okay? If you don't care about the transparency, care about the possible blowback. Like, this is happening, right? So just like cover yourself. You don't want to be sued by somebody because you have a racist AI system, okay, or a misogynistic AI platform. So yeah, do those spot checks. Ensure that these systems are employing fairness where possible. If you can't be sure of that, you can employ some other things to get around it. You can do things like blind hiring, where names and things are removed, identifiers are removed, so that it purely is based on the experience. You can train your AI to fight those biases. Like, don't be lazy. In the same way that these things are created with bias, because these are learning models, teach it something new. Okay. So I think that is us. That is the second and final part of our workplace culture mini series. Anything else that we missed, Yemi, that you want to talk about?
See, you know how I said, we got things off our chest.
Yeah. We sure did. I'm now an A cup.
That's a lot to lose.
Angels wept.
But yeah, I think this was a really good double episode. This is one of those things that, we've had our laughs, we've had our jokes, but this is really serious stuff. And Terry Pratchett is one of my favorite authors of all time. And there is this series of books that he has, the Discworld series. And I remember one quote where one of the characters said that one of the greatest sins you can commit is to treat human beings like things, to treat people like things. And that quote stuck with me, because a lot of the problems that we have now in the workplace and in life is people treating people like things. People are people, and just a tiny smidge of kindness that costs you nothing can mean so much to somebody else. And let's just get our heads out of our asses a little bit and just see other people. Yeah. So yeah, this was good. This was needed.
Oh, okay. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, girl.
So, from quiet quitting to cultural tax, today's episode, coupled with last week's, has explored the hidden forces that are shaping our workplaces. Naming these dynamics is the first step to navigating them. And now you are equipped with the tools to take action.
That is right. This week, we challenge you to think about how these dynamics show up in your workplace. Is there one you're ready to address? Whether it's setting boundaries or advocating for inclusion, small actions, as we know, can have a big impact.
So thank you so much, as always, for joining us on today's episode of the WorkWell Podcast. If you enjoyed it, which I'm sure you did, we'd love it if you could subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. And while you're there, please leave a 5-star rating or review. It means the world to us, and it helps other people discover the show.
Absolutely. You can also connect with us on social media. We are at This Is WorkWell on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We'd love to hear from you.
So next time, I can't believe I'm saying this, next time is going to be our last episode of season 1.
We made it.
And we've got a special one. We have a guest. Yeah. We're going to be sitting down with a mental health specialist who's going to find out why we're so fucking crazy. No, sorry. No, there's not. We are going to be sitting down with a mental health specialist who's going to talk about how to maintain well-being at work and in life. You do not want to miss it. It's going to be jam-packed with tips and advice to keep your mind right.
From a licensed professional, not us loony bin.
Not any old bum. And not one of us.
A licensed professional. He went to school for this.
He went to school for this. We sure didn't, as you well know. Don't follow us. Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait. We will have the one and only Phil Shaw joining us to talk about all things mental health and mental well-being. So, yeah, until then, take care and keep working well. Bye.